All right, we're going to get started. I'll try and talk nice and loud, as well as with being mic'd here. Thanks for everyone who participated in the poll. We like to do this every presentation just to kind of give us a gauge who's here and where we can tackle. My name is Dave Kahn. I'm with SUNY Oswego. It's a state New York on Lake Ontario. I'm joined by Nicholas Sperduti and Christopher Palian. He'll be throwing the catch box. He is a kickball coach and ref, so be ready for him to punt that at you. He's been practicing all morning. So thank you for that. This is some interesting stuff with the VMware and Citrix. I'm going to switch right into the presentation now, if I can. I've got to show the dogs off for a second, though, because, why not? All right, so I hope everyone's here to talk about Windows apps, virtualization, and where you want to go with it. And what we can do with it. So I want to give you our story of Oswego real quick, just kind of understand where we are. As it slowly grows. Basically, we have 110 programs. We're growing our online program quite a bit. There we go. And the demand for online programs, at least in our colleges, we want to offer the same experience if it's in a lab or if it's in San Francisco. We have a pretty big campus, 700 acres, about 800 or 8,500 students that range depending on upper grad, master's programs type stuff. We have a centralized IT department, which makes things fun. And we have 9+ Mac labs and growing, as well as a ton of iOS devices. And this presentation isn't just geared towards Mac people. This kind of spans across hardware as a whole. And we'll take questions at the end, so if you can write them down. I don't know if there'll be a lot of questions until the end, but we'll try and go from there. So it wouldn't be right if I didn't put up our digital strategy for our campus at SUNY Oswego. Basically, we were tasked a year ago to position faculty and students for success by looking for tomorrow to gauge technology, to see where things are headed. So we're really looking at where we're going to go, as well as kind of where we are right now with virtualization and what that means. So, a little more background. About two or 3 years ago, we had a Citrix environment. So I saw VMware being really popular. We run it on a VMware vSphere, but we're running Citrix Zen App and Zen Desktop. And we'll explain why in a second. But myself and Chris kind of inherited this existing Citrix environment, which wasn't run that well. When things aren't run that well, they don't really get a good response or a good turnout. So kind of our Citrix environment was not used that well, dead. Things change, new directors, and they kind of see the benefit of this. We get tasked to rebuild it from the ground up and really leverage the ability to publish applications anywhere. Me being the Mac person and working for the School of Business, which is all Windows, I constantly get berated with questions of what should I get, a Mac or a PC? During orientation, parents just ask all the time. Also, because we're Mac admins for the campus, we always have to play the game of, we always have to defend Macs, right? Macs are better than PCs, or this app is not that. And then the Windows users are like, well, we have Access. We can run Microsoft Access, and Boot Camp comes along. There's a lot of strange things going on with that. So we decided, in addition to moving to this virtualization project, could we add some of the problems that we see with Windows apps on the Mac side? Can we eliminate dual boot? Can we eliminate installing Fusion or Parallels, VBox, anything, and just reduce our support time? We wanted to reduce the master image. So we do layering of images, but at the end of the day, our lab images could be 80 to 100 gig. And then to update them, that's kind of a pain. For our online students may have to download SPSS or SAS. SAS is 40 gigs to download. All right. So these problems we see. Is there any way we can fix this? The bottom line: could we do this so that they could accomplish it anywhere in the world? All right. That was a big thing. I wanted to really find some cost-effective solutions with Chromebooks, Raspberry Pis, thin clients. Also, I love Apple, and Apple computers don't really die for the most part. Right, they last pretty long. We have a ton of iMacs from 9 years ago still kicking it. Is there any way that we can use that power to run these published apps? So why recycle every 3 or 4 years these machines just to run Adobe when we can use virtualization and get the same amount of usage? All right. So we figured out we can and we went with Citrix. We reviewed VMware. That was kind of new, VMware Horizon. We looked at RDP. And really, because we had Citrix already, even though it was terribly configured at the time, we knew what we got, so we figured we'd stick with it. So this being an intermediate course, if I say something that is a little weird, just write it down. We can talk about it after, all right? So in talking about this movement towards virtualization for SUNY Oswego, we've had to figure out what we need. You need the server infrastructure behind it, all right? And I'll get into that in a second. You need Citrix and Microsoft licensing. And licensing is the biggest hurdle through the whole project. And I think that's with anything nowadays, is licensing. You need both Citrix licensings for concurrent users. You're also going to need Microsoft licensings. And I'll get into that and can talk about that for many, many days after, probably. It helps to have Citrix-ready software. So Citrix goes through and tests a lot of their software. And I'll discuss that. I'll tell you and show you, and we'll have a live demo of how to access it, how we have our lab set up to kind of enumerate or whatnot, kind of give the illusion that these apps are installed locally and they're not for the students. And a SUNY Oswego account. So how it works, for the people who said VMware, that should look familiar. We have 2 Dell server-grade racks mounted running vSphere, bunch of VMs carved out so they're redundant, high availability. We have 100% uptime for 2 years. I can say that and not be worried about it. So it's pretty awesome. Pretty happy about its design. I'm able to take things down, hot swap things, no downtime for the students. So I gave you a couple shots of how it works. This is a more in-depth view of how it works. Ultimately, we have a NetScaler, which is a load balancer. And everything goes through that, divides up into 2 storefronts. Again, for high availability, if one storefront goes down, it doesn't matter. If I have to do an update, doesn't matter. Breaks down into 2 delivery controllers. This is what does most of the thinking for our Citrix environment. We have your licensing server and your SQL server, which you can't get around. And then the 4 VMs that do all the heavy lifting of the actual published applications. All right. So if you put a knife down the middle, half of that is on one server, half of it's on the other. So if one Dell 720 goes down, everything else picks up. There may be some, if you look at this, possibly if the license server goes down, what happens? Citrix doesn't really care for 60 days. So if I don't fix something in 60 days, I'm not really good of a system admin, now am I? And our database server is on an enterprise VM, so that's all right. The simple view is this. This is how it works. I figured kind of geek it down a little bit. It's old technology, right? This has been around forever. It's the old thin net that we've been talking about. Applications are streamed to the end user, much like Netflix is to your device. All right. So where did we do this? We have this currently in all of our managed labs, both Mac and PC. All right. We have about 40 to 45 it fluctuates, and I'll get into that too. But 40 applications published out into our software catalog. What we found is it reduces our image more than half, both on the Windows and PC or Mac side. Really what we're looking at is just the OS. There's an acronym JUICE, just the OS, as opposed to VDI and all that. I kind of like that. Just put Windows, OS, the updates, a web browser. For Mac, just put the browser, maybe the receiver that we'll talk about, and that's all you need. Everything else can get layered, keeping things really small and quick for deployment, as well as it's easy to update. And we'll get to that.
To give you an example, our Windows master image for our labs was about 90 gigs. And it was just jammed full of software and other things. And this allowed us to help slim it down quite a bit. Just trying to re-image all the machines every summer with a 90 gig image took a ton of time and a ton of bandwidth going through the network.
Yeah, I think we're down to 25 now, which is great. We're able to provide great customer support. An example of that is, and hopefully you guys can relate, is 2 weeks into the semester you get a call from a faculty, I need SAS installed in the lab. They were supposed to do that 3 months ago, make the request, and they didn't. And for the longest time, it was a challenge to what Chris was saying. You got to close the lab. You got to install it. You have to do 10 different things. You have to coordinate, especially now that school started, the schedule behind that. So now we're coming at 6 o'clock in the morning or staying on the weekend. Or a security update came out for an application. We're now able to, because that software really resides just on 4 VDAs, I can update those 4 machines, and then it blasts to those 8,000 end users instantly. If there's a security issue, or if there's an application we need to take down, I can just click disable, and it automatically gets taken out of that. So there's a lot of power there. We're really able to reduce but improve our overall help desk calls. And Nick works at the help desk, and he'll be able to talk to that in a little bit. In terms of licensing, how many licenses do you need from Citrix? I'm the Citrix admin too. I go to the Synergy conferences over on the West Coast. And one of the biggest things that I took from that was a lot of people over-license. We only have 150 concurrent licenses for Citrix, which means at any one time, 150 people can be using apps. But it fluctuates. So like past semester, Tuesdays, Thursdays, we had 150 concurrent users using multiple apps at 10 a.m. to 1. And then we had 10 users on the system using multiple things Monday. It really fluctuates. The great thing too is if it does go over 150, the license server will loan you 25, send you a reminder. You'll get a call from your Citrix sales rep asking if you need to buy more licenses, which is really nice. But you can just throw money on it and grow your licenses if you need it. It's not the end of the world. So if you guys are thinking of this, go small. You don't need 8,000 licenses, one for each person. We originally started with 75, and that was pretty good. We just kind of grew it up to 150 to be safe. It seemed to work. So here's some stats of this was the fall 2015 semester. I apologize that the print on the bottom is small, but the other thing that this takes away is by installing all of this. I don't know if anyone here uses lab stats or other ways to measure usage of applications, but it's built right into Citrix. So if someone opens up and launches a published application, I get to see how long it's used, when it was used, potentially what lab it was used from, and how many hours were invested in it. So if we have faculty and people call up, I need this $3,000 program, we can then, after we pay for it for a year, go back, and if it's one of those apps to the far right that might have only 28 minutes, we could have a nice talk with that faculty member saying, hey, do you really need it? We can even disable it, not install it, and just see if anyone notices, right? I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. And then, enable it again. So our top was SPSS, Minitab, SAS, ChemDraw, and Maple. That was for this semester, or fall 2015 semester. And you can see, 3,000 hours for this semester on our servers, and then falling short was Minitab. Now, this also allows us to, instead of installing the SPSS Mac version, SPSS PC version, just one version, right? You just install the Windows version, which is pretty much identical. This alleviates the question of Mac or PC. This also helps faculty teach because they're just teaching one version. Again, I teach School of Business. Office 2016 for Mac is great, but it's different enough to confuse a faculty member teaching it in the business school that they don't want to teach 2 different OS versions. And now they don't have to.
This also benefits the students because regardless of what lab they go to, whether it's Mac or PC, they're seeing the same UI and the same layout when they connect to their Citrix app.
And to go one step further with this also allows, again, back to the School of Business, we require all students to bring laptops. Well, laptops are expensive. And what is a laptop now? Is a Chromebook a laptop? Is an iPad a laptop? I don't know. I mean, it could be, I suppose. With this, as long as you have an HTML5 compatible browser, or whatever you're using will support the receiver, which we'll talk about, which is the application that runs most of the Citrix stuff, it doesn't matter anymore. As long as you can run that app, it doesn't matter. And it's really opened it up for low-cost computing, the Raspberry Pis, the Chromebooks, which are growing on our campus quite a bit. So we're allowing students to come in to meet that digital goal that we've had, to reduce our costs, but allow technology everywhere without overextending ourselves in terms of support. So this is the last semester's, you can see things have changed a little bit, but not too much. You can see that Photoshop kind of cropped up in there, those are Mac users. So Mac users are using Photoshop virtualized. And I'll be honest, it's not a great experience as a local installed using your GPU. All right? But for students who may have an iPad, maybe forgot an assignment and want to do something at 3 in the morning, that live off campus, it's perfect. Yeah? The question was through a web browser. We'll talk, yeah. So you're asking, were they using it through the web browser? Yeah.
I mean, that's how the Photoshop. Mac users were using Photoshop through a web browser. That's the question.
Yeah, the question is, were Mac users using Photoshop through the HTML5 Citrix receiver? The answer is yes, as well as Illustrator. Yeah, and in my demo, I'll show you that. But yeah, I mean, that blew me away too. I was wow. So we have use. The interesting too is you can kind of sandbox things. So I can have SPSS 22, 23, and 24. I can have Minitab and Minitab Express. So now I don't have to really push people into things. I can say, oh, it's all right. We'll just keep things in our software catalog for as long as we can. This is just in case the network was being crazy and stuff. This is actually a screenshot of one of our Mac labs in our library. All right, you notice along the dock, there's InDesign, Photoshop, and AI. Those are actual virtual applications. They're not installed locally. But the student really won't know that. They'll click that. That has the ICA link in Citrix language, basically. Goes out. They'll get prompted for the LakerNet ID, because we do not have single sign-on turned on for Macs. We do for Windows. They put that in, and they're off and running. The application folder on that, when you install the Citrix receiver, it auto-populates the application folder. Even though they're not installed locally, it kind of gives the illusion. And I apologize if that's a little, we kind of had to mess with some resolutions for it to be videotaped. But you can see Maple 18 kind of in there. You can see Emergent in those applications. Those are all virtualized. Students don't even know, for the most part. And that's what we want. We don't want them to really figure it out as best we can. I'm going to give you a quick little demo about this. If you have any questions while I'm setting this up, you can ask Chris about that. But I'm going to touch on the gentleman's question about the web. That is super small. That's a little better. So basically, I've logged in using Chrome, which is an HTML5 browser, to our Citrix our software catalog. This is what a student or a faculty would see. You can choose favorites and such. And I can run Photoshop right through the browser if I wanted to. All right, I can run pretty much anything I want through here and add it. And this is the HTML5. It's called the lightweight version. Doesn't allow a lot in terms of graphics. So we've kind of had the help desk say, depending on what they're using, they may want to download the Citrix receiver.
I always have them download the receiver.
So, well, the interesting thing, and most of you probably know, in terms of higher ups and the way things go, higher ups are saying, we don't want anybody to install anything. Wouldn't it be great if they can just go and do things? That's awesome. But there's limitations to the HTML5 browser. There's just no way we can get around that. So I'm going to rev up, ChemDraw or something, and it opens up its own instance. I guess I have to log in again.
This system is wonderful at the help desk because we get off-campus students or online students that need SAS or SPSS, and they don't want to come to campus in the wintertime when we've got 4 feet of snow up in Oswego. Ask, is your internet working? Yeah, I've still got internet. And I can just email them the link. They can just sign in with their LakerNet ID and password. And it's nice because it uses the LakerNet ID and password as well, because then if they get stumped on that, I can help them with that at the help desk too, because I can help reset that password and get them in regardless. And even if they're having browser issues, we've got tons of browser options to get them to the site to download the receiver.
Right, and I'll show you the receiver in a second. So I like showing this off. This is Emergent. If you ask me what it really does, I think it's for psychology. Does anyone here know what Emergent does? I don't either. Point is, a call 2 weeks in from a faculty member, I need Emergent in a lab instantly. And normally I'd be like, no, but I wanted to install it and then yell at him because of the use, because I can watch use, right? I can install this piece of software and be like, you jerk, it's not being used for the whole semester. Never again. We installed this, and it turned out to be like the top 6 used application. So here's a good example of good customer service, able to help the students, help the faculty. In 10 minutes, this was installed in our storefront everywhere. So anybody in the world, as long as they had knew the address and a Lakeland ID, could log in and start using this. If there's an update for any of these 40 applications, I can just update them, and that updates when any session that's connected. So this is the HTML5. I like to call it the lightweight version. Does it allow you to upload, download files, and work off files? And it really does for a lot of applications. It's great. For Photoshop and for other things, and maybe SAS, I would want the full-blown receiver. And I'll show you that. Is there any questions? I was going to wait till the end. Is there any questions about this?
We're going to toss this back to him.
Go for it. You're going to have to catch
help,
this.
so.
You don't want to catch it. Go catch it.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
There we go.
That was pretty good for him, all right? That was awesome.
Does it work? Yeah. What do you do about like GPU acceleration for things like
Awesome
Photoshop?
question, and I'm going to get to that. This
Okay.
is great, yeah. So I love it. You know what's going on. Then.
Yes,
all right.
I'm a VMware guy.
All right. That's great. That's great. And all right, awesome. All right. So basically, we'll get to that. Now you have to throw it back, though, because I'm not going to answer it right away.
One more quick question.
Yeah.
You've got SPSS up there right now. Like, how do Java apps like that handle virtualization?
Why aren't you asking how I like Java apps? Because I'll tell you that.
Well, I can.
I'll tell you what I think.
Based on the response in the room, everybody has the same feeling about
Yeah,
Java.
so sure. No, that was a great question. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to go over to, and up top, I have the Citrix receiver loaded. I'm going to hop over to that while we're talking about this. And I guess we can tap into a bunch of these things. So SPSS in Java, it is one of the slower launching applications.
It's the most popular one.
But it is the most popular, right? You saw the usage.
Yeah, so I saw you had Maltego on your laptop too. That's why I asked.
Yeah. So, yeah. So ultimately, we don't have. I don't like Java.
Nobody does.
That's the problem. Really, it's hard for me to get behind something that doesn't run the way it was designed to run back in the day. So it runs very well on the virtual app servers. It is a little sluggish. We do stay updated with our Java. The nice thing about this, though, is that end user who needs the old version of Java to run some finance program in IE, they don't need to upgrade and mess over that because it's the Java that's installed on the VA, the virtual appliance. So that's another benefit to this, is now we don't have to, by installing software like SPSS or a few others that monkey with the Java stuff, it won't do that. So it handles it really well. And to answer your GPU question, and again, I keep on forgetting to the intermediate, that's one of the things, that's a future. There's a slide coming up of what we've purchased to boost the GPU.
Did you pick out the AMD card yet?
Not AMD. We're doing NVIDIA GPU grid.
Good
The
choice.
M60 Teslas is what we're doing. And what that really comes down to is we have a couple applications like Photoshop, but like ArcGIS, if anyone's familiar with that. ArcMap wants some GPU. But also any app, even a browser, wants GPU. So it doesn't really matter. We all think, oh, GPU, Minecraft. It doesn't have to be Minecraft. It could be Notepad. Notepad uses GPU, and if there's no GPU, it goes to the CPU. All right, and I have 6 or 7 VMs on each of these hypervisors. The more GPU that's not there that pulls the CPU slows it down. So GPU, that's a slide, we're bumping it up. Pass the box.
So, what was the major factor for deciding? Because I see you're running kind of VMware as the the virtualization on the back end, then Citrix on that, and then you had what looked like 2012 running the actual Citrix servers. What was was there like a performance reason, or did you basically decide to stay away from one platform as a whole? Because like RDS kind of would have done similar stuff to this, or VMware Horizon.
So if I'm thinking of, you're asking if we already have VMware, why didn't we go to VMware?
Well, I mean, like,
Is that what you're kind of
so
asking?
like for example, like Citrix has Zen Server,
Yes.
and they kind of
Okay, yeah.
market
No, I know
it
what
with
you're asking,
Zen
yeah.
Desktop.
So
and-
here's the really awesome answer to it is we're centralized, but we have
Yeah.
a server group and we have a network group, right? Our server group they're VM admins. All of our VMs are running on vSphere and ESXi.
Okay.
They would not let me install Zen Server,
Yeah.
although I would love to. And with these 2 new hypervisors we're getting with the GPU to maximize the most GPU using FrameHawks and the new technology, I will very much be pushing towards using Zen Server. At the same time, it's nice to have another group that are masters of their crafts in VMware and vSphere, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, take into that all the hours you see, the 100% uptime,
Yeah.
we're the 3 that support it. So I don't mind the fact that if they want this stuff to run on vSphere and they'll help us, that's fine. But, you know, you 2 are working in tandem here. We'll be going to GPU, the grid, and putting Zen Server on it.
Okay.
And because we had Citrix, even though it was Zen Desktop 6.5 when we inherited it, it was kind of like, we already kind of bought a cow, so let's just keep milking it, I guess, for a while. and VMware Horizon, it's nothing against that. It's still very new.
Yeah.
And that's why.
Okay.
Does that answer that question?
Yeah, it's just confusing because, you know, from a cost perspective, you're paying VMware, Microsoft, and Citrix.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's
Well,
like,
for VMware, again, so this took a different turn. I mean, I just opened up SPS. I feel like I've been set up here. So, yeah, but I don't pay the bills ultimately, and the system kicks
answer.
butt. You know, the system kicks butt. It runs really well. We have a great support with them, with Citrix and with VMware. We're a Dell campus, so we get VMware very cheap as well.
okay.
So in terms of cost, that's really, I don't want to say it's not a factor because this is being videotaped, and I'm sure people will be like, what do you mean it's not a factor? But it really wasn't, and because we only have 150 licenses for that, we keep that cost, because that's the majority of the cost, is the Citrix licenses and the RDS PAL license stuff.
I'm not trying to suggest it's wrong in any way.
I don't think it's
Yeah,
wrong.
I mean, I've seen plenty of people run Citrix on top of vSphere.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
and-
mean, it's just, you know, when you're, and I know kind of it's always that situation where you deploy it and it's under 3 different umbrellas, and then you kind of push it down to 2 or 1 over time.
Yeah, so,
So
I mean, like I
it's
said,
not-
we're really, in July, I'll be trying to move to Zen Server, because on top of that, our NetScaler is a Linux backbone, so it just makes sense.
Yeah.
Totally with you on that. Pass it back to him.
Yeah, sorry.
No, I love it. Go
So
for
now
it.
you say you have 150
Concurrent licenses.
you have 150 licenses, and you know during the course of the semester you would see it hit 150.
Over, yeah.
Are your back-end servers running on that same VMware cluster, and how many hosts do you have?
That's a great question. All right, so what I'm going to do
So
is I'm going to close SPSS, even though you asked me to open it up. No, I thought you did. I thought we were talking about Java, but we all agree that it's not that great. So we're going to go. We're going to go back to this slide, okay? And so we're going to go back to here, okay? And this is VMware and vSphere. So you can see there's actually the 2, Dell 720s, 16 and 17. I think there's 2, 4, 6, 8 VMs on each one. The hypervisors, though, or sorry, the virtual application VMs, we have 4. 2 are on each one. Okay, so we have two VDA servers on one, 2 VDA servers on the other. The NetScaler that we purchased does all the load balancing between the 2. Okay, so in terms of performance in 150 concurrent users, Tuesdays, Thursdays, one semester, it was high. All right, and in terms of performance and use, it really didn't. I didn't see CPU peaking at all, or GPU. The one peaking I did see, and I see all the time, storage, disk space. All right.
I was going to be my next question. What do you use for your SAN?
You can come right up here, dude. I mean, just it's great. But the problem is storage, and I keep saying we'll talk about that. I feel you and I will keep talking about this.
Sorry, go back to
no,
your
it's fine.
presentation.
I run a program called Elatrio SysKit, which is a monitoring program. It's really great. So I keep pretty good tabs on these VMs and the hypervisors. CPU's been fine. Everything's been fine. And these are old systems. This is what we got when Zen Desktop. So the new stuff that's coming in July is far superior. But in terms of load, we had, in terms of that 150 on Tuesday, Thursday, we'll have a lab of 36 kids crunching out SAS, another lab running SPSS, some people in dorms running Photoshop, and in terms of performance, not noticeable. And because Citrix does such a great job with that frame hack and the packaging and everything, it works really good. And we were talking about if the network dropped. I was running this on my LTE Verizon dongled phone last night because people were down. I don't know what was going on last night, but it just worked. So no, we've been pretty good and fortunate with everything. Does that answer that question?
Yeah. I mean, I was more curious as to like what kind of storage are you using to support that many concurrent connections? And like,
Well, so again, we're not
such-
doing so we're not doing VDI. All right, we're just publishing applications.
Right.
So that reduces a lot of the user's size.
Yeah,
right?
you don't have boot storms and things like that.
No bootstraps. Not yet, anyways. But what we do have is we do have profiles. So someone's working in Photoshop and they're working on layers. Next thing you know, it's a 10 gig profile on one of those servers. But just like our labs that run deep freeze, they need to save it to a thumb drive or somewhere, right? So every night, I think at 2 in the morning, I have a group policy delete anything on the VMs or and the profiles. You know, it's not. That's a really crude way of what really happens because if you're working at 2 in the morning, that's not.
Yeah.
But the idea is that it does clean itself up. Coming up in July, we're looking at a product called Kumho by Indiana University. Do you know what that is?
I don't
Got
actually.
you. Good. All
You
right.
got me.
Yes. So Kumho leverages cloud storage. We're a Google campus. We have Google Drive. We have unlimited storage in Google Drive. So with Kumho, it allows us to redirect user profiles to their very own Google Drive directory. So now using group policy, when people log in, it can just pass through and make Google Drive, let's just call it the G drive, where everything gets stored, and I no longer care about storage. But we also are getting a terabyte solid SSDs in these new ones coming in July, which we think is going to be plenty for what we're doing. But storage, I mean, the biggest profiles we've seen are around 30 gig that get eradicated, and that's mostly from our Photoshop users.
Mm-hmm.
So we're pretty good there. And again, we do have a lot of SANs, but they don't let us play with them yet. Again, that server group, they won't let us get in there. So, again, how it works and all that, kind of forgot where we were. Oh yeah, so, the whole fun receiver, which I have opened up. So this is the actual receiver you can download from receiver.citrix.com. If you also go to the URL to Oswego, it will say, do you want to run the lightweight version or download this? This is the bigger, better, badder, awesome experience. It does USB connection a lot easier, drag and drop, and you get better GPU performance out of it. So, we kind of dabble. Nick said it best in the help desk of what we recommend. I would recommend the receiver full-blown all the way through. With iOS, you can run it in a browser, but download the app and have a better time with it. And you can hook up an external, Bluetooth mouse and a keyboard. So now you have a real thin client with that.
Would you mind tossing back the catch box?
Only if you're done with it. I mean,
Oh, bad throw.
sorry, hold on 1 second.
Knock someone on the head.
Chris, just toss it to.
Oh.
Speak into the box.
So I was just wondering if you use zero clients in your lab.
That's a great question. You guys are awesome today. I really didn't know what to expect. Question, in case I didn't pick up, is are you using zero clients or thin clients? Like, not, you have anything in mind? Like the Raspberry Pi stuff or Wise boxes or?
Wise.
Wise.
I mean, they
Which
don't
ones
make
by-
them.
Yeah. So most of the thin clients are really leveraged towards VDI up until recently. So Citrix just released in 7.9 this past month that they're allowing ViewSonic, who makes these thin clients and zero clients, to support Raspberry Pis. And Raspberry Pis and Citrix got together and really leveraged the GPU, because that's the big thing. So we're actually working with Raspberry Pi stuff to see if that leverages it. But really, when I hear people talk about thin clients and zero clients, we have a whole basement full of zero clients, these old machines that we're going to toss out and recycle,
Oh, yeah, we used
that
to
are
use those
probably
units.
better than these Wise boxes that you have to pay a license for. Talk about licenses. When you use Wise boxes, you have to buy another license every year to use these thin clients. So really, we're trying to use either Chromebooks, Raspberry Pis now, or I don't say ancient machines, but machines that are old but still well enough to You can take a 2009 iMac, throw 128 gig solid state in there, 8 gigs of RAM, use the system, and it's amazing.
Yeah, the Chromebooks, you can use the kiosk mode, right, and launch it right into the receiver.
Correct. So he brings up a good point. Can you use the kiosk mode in Chromebox to run it? Absolutely. And on top of that, Zen Desktop 7.9 just came out with a secure browser and kiosk mode as well. So we could really just open an app if we wanted to in it. So write it up into the storefront. Exactly.
Most of our faculty and staff and our labs are on about a 4 or 5 year refresh rate. So every 4 or 5 years, we constantly keep getting, or every year, we keep getting these 4 or 5 year old machines, which usually aren't really good to put out back to somebody else because you hand them a 5 year old machine, even if they're an adjunct professor, they're like, well, this is really terrible. But we could, with a Citrix receiver, you could reuse your 4 or 5 year old iMacs or 4 or 5 year old MacBooks, and because it's leveraging the power of the Citrix servers, they can still get what apps they need. It saves us cost because then we don't have to put out a brand new iMac to someone who may not need it, or a kiosk.
The nice thing about the zero clients and thin clients, you don't have to manage all the back-end operating systems.
Right. So he was just addressing that you don't need to back end it, and that's why we love Chrome management devices and Chromebooks, because we can really much accomplish that. But if you install ARD on your iMac or something, you're just as well off with it for the most part. Or go to one of the profile sessions, you can pretty much accomplish that. But the other thing too, is it doesn't just have to be Mac. All right, it could be Linux, it could be anything that can run an HTML5 browser, or if there's the receiver made for it. And there's tons of Linux versions of the receiver. So we no longer have to really be concerned about, what do you have or what do you want. It's really what app, and does that app allow virtualization? Because some apps, not a lot, don't allow it. They figured out that they can make more money by not allowing it and charging more money for it. So there's a lot of things about that. This is just up on the slide what a faculty had. We kind of piloted this right with our math department because they had a lot of apps, Minitab, SAS, Maple. So they would be a good test subject. And one of I don't think he's our chair of that department, but he was very pleased that students can just access that. He could give an assignment out and no longer hear, well, the lab was closed, or there was a snowstorm, the network went down. That does kind of matter, I suppose, but for the most part. But he was able to really engage those students and have the same experience across the board, because again, it's not going to be the Mac version, the Linux version, the light version. It's the same version for the teacher, the faculty, and the students, and our online students, which is ever growing. All right.
This works well at the help desk as well too, because it's always a solution you have. You don't have to tell somebody no if a student calls or comes to the help desk and they say, do you have a copy of Photoshop or InDesign that I can install? I say, no, we don't have licensing for the students, but I can show you where you can buy the education version. Now I can walk them through this, and they can use their SUNY credentials to use Photoshop, InDesign, whether they're on campus, in a dorm, or at home. So you don't have to tell them no anymore. So it's good customer service.
Right.
How do you provision the license then?
How do we provision the license? It's a great question. So first, so what Nick's saying is all Nick really has to do at the help desk is say, go to citrixapps.oswego.edu. Sign in with your Lakernet ID and password, and you can run the light version of any applications in there. Done. Easy peasy. He may have to walk them through. I was going to show you the login screen, but that didn't happen. The Citrix receiver, it's basically the same thing. Put the URL in, citrixapps.oswego.edu, and you're pretty much going. How do we do provisioning of licensing? That's a really broad question. It depends on our licensing. For our Adobe licenses, it's different than our SaaS licensing. Adobe says, even though it's on-premise, if it goes off through virtualization, that's different. So that's one of the big things that we really have to work on and stay diligent on is our licensing through the vendors. So when we first got this project, we called every vendor of the application we had and then got it in writing. Do you allow virtualization? Do you allow it with Citrix? Do you, what can't we do and what can we do? And we take care of all of that through our SysKit Elatio program. We'll check the licenses. And through Citrix, you can actually say this can only run 50 times in this grouping. So I can really narrow it down and say only Palian can open EMS because we only have one license for it. you know, you could really hone it down in the studio of Citrix to do all of that for us. So not a big issue, but we do stay very diligent. And we just switched our Adobe contract, which meant we had to take that at some places. Because it was Citrix and it's virtualized, I just changed the scope and the rules. Don't go to this lab, or this lab. You can go to these 2 labs. 10 minutes of work, didn't have to leave my office. No one had to do anything. It's done. So there's a huge worth there. So future goals, graphic processing, GPU. We really want to throw Autodesk and all of the 10 programs that comes with that on there. Autodesk is free for us. They give it to us for free for our SUNY. So we need GPU. We really need something to make those run and run smoothly. We're looking at storage space. I mentioned that with Google Drive and Kumho by Indiana University, very inexpensive. If anyone is looking for network storage, I definitely suggest looking into that. So, like I said, we're getting 2 new hypervisors with these really expensive GPU cards in it that should solve pretty much any lag we saw with the rendering, and we should see an increase in more applications requested. So anyone can ask for an app to put into the store, as long as it is allowed, licenses allow, and the performance is there. With the new GPU, we should be good.
Not at Oswego, but at my last employer, we had several ADP products that ran on specific versions of Java and only in specific versions of Internet Explorer. There we were able to use virtualized apps, Citrix, to put through that specific version of Java that we needed with that specific version of Internet Explorer to like the HR group or this department that was dealing with ADP. And they could log into Citrix, load up that browser as a Citrix app, and go in and use it without having to mess around with the Java that's installed locally on their client or having that specific version of Internet Explorer. So it is very robust and useful, depending on if you have weird, situations going on that you need to take care of.
But again, he mentioned conflicting dependencies, but Zen Desktop has come a long way. They really allow you to almost sandbox a lot of that, which is great. So I can offer 3 versions of IE if I really wanted to feel daring, and we do. Up until a couple years ago, we needed IE9 for a web app. And that really put a crunch on our Mac users. So much so that a lot of people couldn't purchase Macs because they were in the finance department. Well, now they can. So those type of things we really see the benefit of. That is the end. We have 30 minutes. We're happy to take any questions or talk about things. It's all up to everyone here. Any questions? Yeah, throw in the box.
What was the performance monitoring program you used?
Yeah, the question was what's the performance monitoring program. Do I have it still open? It's Syskit, SYSKIT, by ACCL Ratio. I don't know if I still have it open because the network dropped. No, and you can take I have my cards up front, but it's great, very inexpensive. It really helps us out because, again, we have plenty of time, but you can do different packages with a Citrix desktop. We have Enterprise. We didn't go Platinum because Platinum is very expensive. Platinum has all of that insight and reporting capabilities. For a fraction of the cost, we got Syskit, installed it, and it does more than what we expected. And for sysadmins, it doesn't just do virtualization. It will look at all of your VMs and boxes across your server infrastructure. It's very cool. Any other questions? Going once, going twice. All right, we'll be up here for a while. Thanks, everybody. Take care.